So for this discussion, we thought we'd put together a panel of what I call practitioners, people who are practicing in the area of innovation. And to that end, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the four panellists. Ben Waters, who has already been introduced to you from GE. Ross Hepworth, put up your hand, Ross. Thank you. Ross is the manager of the Clean Tech Industries Sunshine Coast, full stop. I stop it there, don't I? Although I used to know it as the Sunshine Coast Clean Tech Cluster. Tom Gilbert from Oz Industry, and Dr. Lou Muller, Senior Manager from KPMG. Would you please welcome the four of them? But the first question I had was one of what's the driver of innovation, and it was to Tom, as an observer, obviously within government, looking out into industry and more broadly into society, and dare one say providing the incentive for innovation to a certain extent. What were the values, cultural aspects and the values that he was witnessing around innovation in business in Australia? So Tom, over to you.
Well, firstly, yeah, as you've acknowledged, I suppose I need to put a caveat on anything I say today. What I say today is from the perspective of a spectator. That said, I do get the benefit in my job of seeing many companies travel down a certain part of that innovation pathway. And in answer to your question, I suppose it's a sort of a combination of guts and intestinal fortitude, I think, self-awareness and access to the right resources. So I'm sort of happy to expand on any of those three things if needed.
Well, the recent Clean Tech program, has there been a greater uptake, interest, appetite for the type of investment that the government is providing for that particular area of the economy?
I think without doubt, yes. And for those that aren't aware, the Clean Tech investment funding is split into three streams actually, but two predominant streams. One is the funding that's directed towards clean tech innovation, and the other, a large portion of funding is directed towards clean tech investment, so plant and equipment replacement. So in terms of innovation, I suppose we saw initially some quite a limited sort of uptake of that. There was a flurry of interest in the program which didn't translate into that many applications. On the flip side, the Clean Tech investment program was swamped and is currently swamped, and we're dealing with lots of applications from companies that are seeking to put in place new energy efficient plant and equipment to replace their old stuff. Moving back into the clean tech innovation sphere, I think it's fair to say that recently we've seen a bit of an upswing in applications, and you know, I think that's a positive thing. So in answer to your question, yes, I think there is a significant level of interest in the clean tech innovation space, as well as a very strong level of interest in the clean tech investment space.
And when you say that, is that nationally or is that particular to Queensland?
I'd say that's nationally. We have access to the national stats at work, and we find that, you know, I think that's my colleagues in other state offices, I think, would echo that sentiment.
Thanks, Tom. Lou, practitioner in the area, what's your observation in terms of my original question around the values, the cultural behaviour of Australian business to innovate? And has it changed in, say, in the last 5 years?
Well, I come to this from the point of view of an R&D practitioner in the area of administering or assisting companies to access mainly government incentives, principally through the R&D incentive scheme and the various grants such as have just been mentioned. And we've seen a continuous stream of companies seeking to take advantage of the opportunities that arise. I think the main thing that I would observe is it's about identifying opportunities. So companies will identify opportunities from within their own business, and that would be the principal driver. But I think a very important driver is being able to identify opportunities to value add in terms of the access that they are able to get to funding. So there are two principal resources, I think, that affect a company's ability to innovate. There's the intellectual resources, and for many small companies, these are quite limited. And one of the things that they can seek access to is a broader interaction with other suppliers of intellectual resources like universities and the CSIRO and so on, as evidenced from Vina's talk this morning. And the other, of course, is financial resources. So many, particularly SMEs, are very constrained in their ability to put large investments into R&D, and the ability to access supplementary funding is quite crucial to their capacity to expand.
Interesting. Ben, you come from a company that has a history of innovation. What drives the cultural appetite to innovate within GE?
I think it's that 130-year heritage back to Edison. That's sort of important, and we are trying to. I think in the 80s and 90s we potentially lost our way and got too heavily into the capital, financial services, businesses, and real estate and stuff. I think you can see us now withdrawing to the deep technology businesses where there are deep technological advantages, barriers to entry, that where the best technology succeeds and gets paid for. I think that's our heritage. That's what we're refocusing on these days. Finance being sort of 25%, technology being 75%. That's a bit of a flip, at least in Australia. And you know, we're putting significant R&D into a couple of challenges that we see globally, which are both based on sort of century-long megatrends. It's a, you know, the people that hear me speak regularly know what I'm going to say. That if you want to be around another 130 years, you've got to pay attention to what's important this century, not just what's important this quarter. Resource scarcity, resource productivity being a pretty important one. Heard a great insight from Vina this morning about that. Other one's affordable healthcare, as it happens. We've got two big cross-business initiatives around those things: Eco-Imagination, Health Imagination. Each come with significant R&D internally. Now that spend for Eco in its first 10 years, from 2005 to 15, will be $15 billion US in clean tech R&D internally. But increasingly we find that that's not enough, and you've got to do collaborative innovation. So more and more we're looking for venture capital investments. We're looking for collaborative research arrangements, as we have with CSIRO in Australia, a 5-year, $20 million research alliance where we're working from aviation materials through detecting Alzheimer's disease to deploying solar thermal. It's broad. And most recently we're running this Eco-Imagination Challenge in Australia, which is a clean tech sort of VC competition looking for low carbon solutions. Happily had 191 entries from Australia and New Zealand, about to announce the awards, the 5 Innovation Awards in about a month's time, 19th of March in Sydney. So, does that go anyway to answering your question?
191?
Yeah, I was pleased. Yeah.
Gosh. I mean, I often think this country's not particularly innovative.
No, I don't think
that's
so.
Wrong.
I think we're particularly innovative technologically. I think we're probably not innovative enough commercially. And, you know, we see that valley of death often being, you know, the trap for good science, for good engineering that doesn't get commercialised. That's the problem we're squarely trying to address with some of GE's money. Not trying to be majority investors in these companies, we're just trying to get them through that valley of death and into commercial operation.
Well, let's go from big to not so big. Ross, probably for the benefit of the room, can you give us a quick stump speech on the cluster and also an insight into the culture and the values of the businesses that form the cluster and their appetite for innovation?
So when they amalgamated councils in 2008, you know, we're probably about to get de-amalgamated if you read the papers, up on the Sunshine Coast, you know, the council that came in decided that it wanted to be Australia's most sustainable region. And it put forward a vision about being Australia's most sustainable region. It had a lot of bits and pieces to it. But one of the bits and pieces of that sparked up the interest of a person who worked in a government organisation, a state government organisation, which was about state development or innovation and development and so on. And this person had a passion, Anne Kennedy, who was just left their organisation, and what she wanted to do was get those businesses who were in clean tech together in some way in order to promote their businesses, but to promote the region as a hub for clean tech industries. And this would add to, you know, the reputation of the region as Australia's most sustainable region.
And correct me if I'm wrong, she was in Dee at the time?
Dee.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dee. And Dee were kind enough to kind of allow her to spend most of her time getting that industry cluster together. But at some point in time, as governments do, they get tired of those kind of initiatives and say, well, it has to be self-funding in some way, so, you know, go and do something else and form an association, which we are at the moment. And we're still surviving off grant money, which expires shortly, so we're looking to become sustainable in our own right. The culture of the businesses there is very much small to medium, very much passionate about their part of the clean tech industry that they focus in. Very much, when you talk to them, innovators about every part of what they're doing. Most of them very much niche oriented, but very much thinking all of the time around new ways about seeing this. There was a lovely definition. I did some work in innovation some time ago, because at some stage, at one point in my career, they made me the General Manager of the Centre for Innovation and Development for TAFE. When I asked the Deputy Director General then what innovation meant, he said, well, that's for you to find out, son, come back and tell me. And so we went away and did some work. But the best definition I ever saw of innovation was in an agricultural machinery catalogue that said, I saw what everybody else saw, but I thought what no one else thought. And that's what you're seeing a lot in the clean tech businesses on the coast. They're seeing what people see, but very much they're into innovation. They also, you would class them in lots of ways, the majority of them as, you know, struggling small to medium enterprises.
Can you give us a few examples of some of the companies and their technologies?
Oh, gee, no.
Okay. But look at the website.
Oh, we've got one here. Mike's from Air Barriers, and he's into how you, you know, he was giving us a fascinating demonstration up the back about the efficiency of this building and how the air conditioning, how inefficient it is because of the leakages through the lifts and through the ducts and so on. We've got people into the water in the natural environment. We've got people, of course, into solar manufacturing, solar power, solar water.
Yeah.
We've got people into waste management, and we have a small number, and it's a growing number, of building design people.
Oh, okay. Interesting.